How's it going? Welcome to art video or something. Stay. Stay. Despite the light of Jesus Christ behind me, we're going to be doing a cool new YouTube thing where I talk about art stuff that I do and that I've learned and that I am continuing to learn. And hopefully trying to teach that to you guys. And just talk about it and explore it and collaborate and do all the cool things that you get to do with art because it's cool and fun and I want art friends. So today I figured what would be a good place to start? Let's start with the setup and the tablets and the pens and the brushes and the software and a Cthulhu painting. Because why not? So let's talk about tablets because that's probably why a lot of you clicked on this video because everybody wants to know the magic tablet that's going to make them good at art. Do you need a $3,000 Wacom Cintiq? No, you don't. In fact, it might make you worse if you don't already know how to do art. You can't rely on your materials. And so if you're doing art and you're saying, I can't do it well because I don't have a screen tablet, then you're wrong. What do I mean when I say tablet? A tablet is a thing for digital artists that you draw on with a stylus and it puts brush marks on a canvas. This kind of tablet is called a pad tablet. It's called that because it's a pad of plastic. It's just a piece of plastic with magic inside. There's no screen, nothing. You draw on it like this. I have a pen. You draw on it like this and it makes cool things happen on your computer screen, completely separate from the tablet itself. This is called a screen tablet. It's called that because it has a screen. You draw on the screen, it appears on the screen, just like when you draw on paper, it appears on paper. A lot of people like screen tablets because there's less of a disconnect, but I'm going to tell you kind of the benefits of the pad tablet and why I actually prefer to use them, even though I have both. Why don't I like screen tablets? One, they're way more expensive, even for beginners. Especially for beginners, I should say. Screen tablets are a lot of money. They can be several hundreds of dollars for a small one. The one I have was like $350 and it's the same size as my iPad, which is the other thing I draw on, but that's not the subject of today's video. If it's just as small as something like an iPad, but the styluses are bigger, clunkier, and there's more what's called parallax, so space between your actual cursor and the tip of your pen, then they just feel like a worse version of the iPad. If you can't afford an iPad, but you can't afford a screen tablet, then it might be worth it to you, but you really don't need one. I would say that these two tablets are a similar level of usefulness, both the screen tablet and the pad tablet. The thing is, the screen tablet costs like $350, and this tablet costs like not even $80. So for like a fifth of the price, ish, you can get something that is just, if not more, useful. I actually prefer to use the pad tablet, and that is for a number of reasons. One, it's a little bit smaller, takes up a little less desk space, and it's just good to get used to moving forward because I'm going to be moving into college soon and then my own apartment, and I'm not always going to have a huge room to spread out in and a huge desk to put all my junk on. The second is I happen to have a nice monitor, and odds are if you have a computer, you do too. And you probably want to use your nice big monitor for drawing. It's going to look a lot better than even a reasonably expensive pad tablet or screen tablet's going to. So if you use a pad tablet, then you get to put all of your money into the sensitivity, the tilt control, all the cool things that digital art allows you to have while getting to use your good monitor. Or even your cruddy laptop screen is still probably better than these. Maybe that's changed. I haven't bought a tablet in a while, except for the pad tablet. But Huey on Canvas Pro 13 is still being sold for a big amount of money. And it's not a bad product. It's just not my cup of tea. So then, what pad tablet do I use if I like them so much? Well, this is the Huion HS611. Huion makes great tablets for not nearly as expensive as Wacom. They're a little less pretentious in that way. They're really good tablets. This tablet has everything that I would consider to be mandatory for professional artwork. a lot of space to draw on. This is about the size of a large sketchbook, and it lets you draw with your whole arm. That, to me, is important. It's got full pressure sensitivity. Older tablets have this too, but not as much. This one has 6,000 something levels. Older ones have 2,000 something. It makes a small difference. You can feel it. It's a little bit smoother. This tablet is also very easy to carry around. It's like not even a centimeter thick. It's super thin and super, like, it feels nice. It's not made of metal, but it doesn't feel like it needs to be made out of metal. Like, it feels like you can move it around without it breaking. Durable, I guess, is the word I'm looking for. And you can tell it's very much made to be moved around. It has this little ribbon right here with the Huion logo. And that is made for the stylus to go in when you're traveling around. This tablet, unlike the screen tablet, is also a little bit better for cable management. It's got one wire. It's USB-C, not micro USB, anything dumb like that. Plugs right into your computer. Easy as that. The pen itself is brilliant. It is completely battery-free, which basically means you don't have to charge it. This is not necessarily a benefit over the screen tablet. Most modern tablets will have this, but make sure your tablet has this. It's way, 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 way more convenient. Not having to charge your stylus is a godsend. The tablet itself comes with this little inkwell style pen holder. It just sits on your desk, holds the pen. Cool as that. It's got your extra nibs in there, which is good because I go through nibs like crazy. Things that this tablet has that you don't necessarily need but I think are fun are all these little media controls at the top. This slider bar is handy sometimes. And I like the fact that it comes in fun colors. This is the only tablet I've found that comes in fun colors. You can't really see, but it is actually blue with little like star texture in it. And I kind of like it. The box itself has an orange one on it, and that's kind of the default. This tablet comes in orange. What other tablet comes in orange? The one thing that I don't love about this tablet is the fact that it doesn't make that super satisfying sound that some of the Wacom ones do, that like, yeah, see? That doesn't sound very satisfying. Some of them go like, and I'm not like an ASMR guy, but that's a super satisfying noise. I use a stand for my tablet. Came with the screen tablet. I use it for the pad tablet. I keep it at a very shallow angle. You don't need a stand, but I would recommend doing something to keep it at an angle, even if it's just propping it up on a book or something. You want it to be pretty flat, but just a little bit up. It helps to keep your wrist from tiring out. It's pretty nice for long drawing sessions. I keep my keyboard right to the left of the tablet and my mouse right to the right. It lets me kind of handle keyboard shortcuts and stuff while working with my tablet. I like it. It works well. It's a very convenient setup. Do it. All right, let's talk about software real quick. I'm going to show you a little bit more about how I use it in the actual time lapse, but I just wanted to give you the rundown of Clip Studio Paint, which is the software that I use. Basically, this is it. This is Clip Studio Paint. This is the layout I use. It's nothing particularly special. It's just all the tools I have. I like that I can kind of get the stuff out of the way. I like Clip Studio Paint more than Photoshop because there's just a better community around it and it's a little bit easier to explore and do new things with it. It's way easier to like find things that other people have made. Downloading brushes and materials and things is so much more easily supported with Clip Studio than Photoshop, and it's an art program as opposed to a photo editing program that people just happen to use for art, which means that the brush engine and everything just feels a lot more naturalistic. I'm coming from Art Studio Pro on the iPad, which has a gorgeous brush engine, and so Photoshop's brush engine just really kind of drives me a little bit batty. And when you hear people who have been using Photoshop for a very long time move over to Clip Studio, they always say, oh, it feels way more like drawing on paper. And I totally see what they mean there. So that's kind of why I use Clip Studio. And let's get into how I actually use Clip Studio. Alright, so I start off by just collecting a bunch of reference photos into this program called PureRef. I'll put a link for it in the description. I start off with a basic compositional sketch, which is really nothing, and I end up just kind of painting over it. But I just did this real quick when I immediately had the idea, because I needed to get it out on paper before I did anything else. I actually had the idea to paint Cthulhu when I was just messing around in the Clip Studio Paint asset store, and one of the brushes just had a small picture of Cthulhu on it, like as just a tiny little doodle, and I was like, I want to paint Cthulhu, which is weird because I normally don't like the Cthulhu's design as a monster. He just looks a little bit too much like a man with an octopus face. So I'm starting out here with just a basic sketch. I'm using whatever brush, it doesn't really matter. And I'm just kind of laying out the main composition of everything, where I want things to go. I end up not being super happy with the composition, but that's alright. I'll get more into the critique afterwards. But I just really wanted this painting to show the scale of Cthulhu rising out of the depths, illuminated only by the lone lighthouse. I figured that was a very cool image. And I wanted it to be very frightening. It was very late at night when I did this, and I was like, I want to do some cosmic horror nonsense. So I'm just sketching in some of the anatomy for Cthulhu. I'm not doing anything too crazy. Most of the stuff is going to be obscured by fog anyways. But I just wanted to get the tentacle shape right, because I feel like that's a big part. Like, this hand doesn't stay. It's just kind of a placeholder. But yeah, the curliness and stuff of the tentacles I feel like is a very important part of the Cthulhu aesthetic. So now that I've done this, I kind of start out by just painting in random colors, like almost completely random colors, just greens and blues, which don't stay, just to mark out light areas versus dark areas. Kind of painting in where highlights are going to be, where shadows are going to be. And the nice part about digital painting is all this stuff is subject to change. The only thing that stays is that there's some blue in the final image. But I'll do this, and you can already see I'm getting warmer with the light colors. And Cthulhu's very green here. He's going to chill out a little bit and become a little bit more homogeneous. I airbrush over almost everything to soften it up and push it back. And I just start in with the details. I'm not super happy with the boat. I wish I found better reference. I had some pictures of like old-timey yachts and stuff to use, but I really should have looked up like fishing trolleys or something, and you can see I sketched in a few more boats and then erased them, but I do wish I had stuck with it and found a way to put multiple boats. If I were to do this painting again, I would make sure it was more of a harbor scene than a single boat. Because honestly, it just looks like one of those boats 3D printers use to benchmark their prints. Alright, so I've zoomed in on Cthulhu here, and it's just a little bit more kind of detail adding. It's the same thing everywhere. I'm just trying to get the values and stuff to a place where I like them. Because we're getting a little bit more into some of the colors that are going to stay finally here. I actually used something that I don't normally use in this painting, which are those tree stamp brushes. I normally don't like stamp brushes because they look very fake, but I figured they worked very well for that like middle distance area, and you'll see I actually go through and paint over them later to make them blend in a little bit more with the actual painting. So the way I'm doing this here is I'm just going through and highlighting everywhere that there would be highlights. Because he's so far away, it's important to remember that he basically, the shadow parts just disappear into the distance. There's no dark parts as far as it goes. The darker the shadows would be, the closer to just the normal sky color it becomes. So you basically only see the highlights and the shadows blend into the sky. That's kind of the best way I can describe that kind of deal. I really like this stage of the painting because the scale feels much more real than it might end up becoming. You can see I changed the lighting there. At first I wanted it to be lit kind of like a horror game, like there was a light coming straight from the observer. But I didn't like it very much, so I ended up switching it to the light coming from somewhere off screen. I'm just refining things at this point. Like, the big bulk of the painting is here, honestly, and it's just a case of futzing around with it. You can see I'm changing the levels to get the colors a little bit more where I like them. And then it's just detailing, really. You'll see I had a few more highlights to Cthulhu to define his form a little bit more. Even a small rim light from the moon or something. But you'll see in just a second, I'll zoom in on his face and really do some highlights. But I'm also working on the boat in the foreground, because those are kind of my two focal points, is Cthulhu's face and the boat in the foreground. Rotating the canvas is something that I used to never do when drawing on the computer, and it's really a hindrance when you don't do it. I ended up mapping the rotation key to just the second button on my pen stylus, so that I can just hold that button down and move my pen and it rotates the canvas super intuitively. And that just helps because you can draw much easier in one axis than another. So you can see here, I'm starting to re-detail his face a little bit more. I'm penciling in some of those like defining lines and wrinkles, as well as a few of the suction cups. Those become a little bit more defined later. I end up moving that weird tentacle with the hole in it. What is that called? You always see that on octopuses. That little tentacle thing that has the hole in it. But I end up moving it later, and it ends up looking better. But yeah, you can see the darkest shadows on Cthulhu are no darker than the actual sky itself. And that's really important for making things look like they are far away. I do detail his face quite a bit because it is such a focal point. But I'm intentionally not detailing all of him. Because if I detail him too much, he will look like right up on us, and I still want him to appear far away. So like you see his wings get very little detail, his arms kind of just blend off into the fog, his torso even blends off into the fog. So I'm just liquefying things around and just futzing around with it. That's really all this is it's just a push and pull of different forms. It really helps to do studies of this sort of thing and have good reference beforehand. So like I'm pretty familiar with human anatomy, and so I know what to do with Cthulhu to change to make it look inhuman. So like I kept the human anatomy, but I made it much more sinewy eventually, and really redefined a lot of those muscular lines. That texture brush works really well to just add a little bit of abstraction into the whole thing. I end up pulling it back a little bit, but having those just raky lines do make it add some abstraction. And there we go, there's that sinewiness that I was talking about, where I add kind of highlights, almost like he's made of some kind of writhing tentacle or something. I thought that was kind of a neat idea. I even play around with adding some stuff coming off of him, and it works well. So here I'm using these kind of streaks to show that he's rising out of the water, and there's a lot of water falling off of him and falling back down into the harbor. It just helps to add to that sense of scale. So instead of being like drippy, he's like raining. Throwing a little bit of moonlight behind him, you know how it be. Really silhouette him a little bit. Maybe this was a good idea, maybe it wasn't. I don't know. Let me know what you think. I actually want to draw a little bit of attention to the lighthouse while I just detail other things. You can see my reference in the top right, and you can see kind of how I did the lighthouse to look very much like the reference with very few strokes. Like it reads like a lighthouse, in my opinion, quite well. And you'll be able to see it a little bit better in a second after I'm detailing this boat. But just one of the best skills you can learn as a painter is being able to convey something in as few strokes as possible. Because that lighthouse is basically like 3 shapes, and so it's nice to be able to convey it in only a few strokes. And it helps to add to the simplicity and, in my opinion, the atmosphere of the piece. So I'm just going to push things around a little bit here. I decide to save it, finally. Change the size of the dock. And generally, just kind of finish up this piece. Add some lines to the water. I'll discuss a little bit more of my critiques at the end. But yeah, just stuff like this, some splatter brushes, because I use that reference of the wave splash, and it's very splattery. You're gonna see in just a second, I try and find a brush for foreground matter, but I can't, because the Clip Studio Paint Asset Store is a little bit unintuitive. So I end up just making my own. So I fix all the colors, and I end up just painting some splotches in, and then I blur the hell out of them, and that works kind of well as foreground material. I know Dave Greco has a brush that does foreground material, I just haven't bothered to import it yet. And yeah, so I'm just doing some finishing touches here, really. Trying to find any filters or anything I want. I add a little bit of a vignette with a multiply layer, and I just futz around with the levels and things until it's where I like it. Save it, and call it kind of a day. Critique time! It's really an important thing in art to critique your work when you're done, so that you know what to do better next time. So let's talk about what I would change. First of all, I would do something different with this boat. I talked about it a little bit in the time lapse, but to me, I think it would have been better to really convey that this is a full harbor, and not make it look as big in the piece. I think this boat could have benefited from being a lot smaller compared to the mighty Cthulhu. I would also change the way I do this water, maybe looking at a bit more reference of like oceans and stuff as they recede into the distance. I think the way this water looks right now actually makes it look a lot flatter than I want it to. It doesn't look like it travels way into the distance. As far as Cthulhu himself goes, I'm pretty happy with it. There's some weird anatomy that I would change if I, didn't do this at midnight. And just making sure like the water comes down a bit straighter, and just things like that could improve it, but also don't take away from it a whole bunch. I could say, oh, I wish I detailed it more, but then it wouldn't look as far away. Or I could say, oh, I wish it detailed it less, but then it wouldn't look as focal. So honestly, I'm pretty happy with the way it is. I quite like Cthulhu himself and the way the light reacts with him. It looks pretty nice. I actually decided that kind of as a quick fix, it might be interesting to just crop it, and so I did, and I just kind of got that boat out of there. And I honestly, this square format, I really like this. By getting rid of the boat, I've made the two focal points Cthulhu and the lighthouse, which are much more balanced with one another and make Cthulhu feel much bigger, in my opinion, than having the big old boat that was just as big as he was in the foreground, even though it was like a tiny dinghy. I think this method here of just comparing him to the lighthouse does make him feel a lot larger and more intimidating. I also, in my layout sketch, I did have much more of an upward angle of Cthulhu, and I think this could have benefited from me sticking more to that. He's kind of hunched over here, and the camera's, even the crop almost looks like you're at eye level with him, or like you're looking at his pecs, which isn't really where we want to be. We want to be down on the ground, gazing up at his awesome majesty. Awesome in the literal, like the ancient sense of the word, not as in like he's super cool, as in induces awe. But yeah, I think those are all kind of valid critiques, and because of the fact that I didn't nail the scale in the way that I necessarily wanted to, I think this could really benefit from a redraw, and so I might do that someday. Let me know if you want to see it. And yeah, I think I'm actually going to call the video right there. So you guys, be sure to let me know what else you want to see, any other art tutorials, art tips, even just ideas for paintings you want to see, challenges. I'll do anything. Honestly, I just love painting and sharing it. And I want to see your guys' stuff. I'll put a link to a Discord in the description that you're welcome to join and share your art. I'd love to see it. But yeah, you know, follow me on Instagram, whatever, add me on Discord, subscribe if you want to see kind of more stuff like this. Follow me, you know, TikTok, whatever. I'll put all the links in the description. And yeah, you know, I really appreciate you guys watching this. I hope you guys all have a great day, and thank you for sticking with me while I talk about dumb stuff.